My grandson, Caleb, and his new wife, Bethany, plan to modernize and sell off our family's century-old distillery, quietly getting rid of the ancestral recipes and heritage. When I realized they were trying to erase everything my late husband, Leo, and I built, I knew I had to act. This distillery is more than just a business, I declared. It's our soul, and I won't let it die. Before we begin, share in the comments what would you do in that situation? Every voice matters. Thanks. My name is Martha. I'm 74 years old, and for nearly 5 decades, the very air I've breathed has been infused with the rich, intoxicating scent of malted barley, sweet corn, and aged oak barrels. It's the fragrance of Oak Haven Distillery, a legacy woven into the fabric of my being, a dream brought to life by my late husband, Leo, and his father before him. Our whiskey, Oak Haven's Golden Reserve, wasn't merely a spirit. It was a liquid narrative, each amber drop recounting generations of meticulous craftsmanship, etched with the very soul of our family. Since Leo passed 5 years ago, leaving a void that still aches within me, our grandson Caleb stepped up to manage the distillery. He was a bright, eager young man, brimming with modern ideas, a fresh perspective I genuinely welcomed. For a time, I believed he understood the delicate balance between progress and tradition, that he would honor the past while embracing the future. But a subtle, almost imperceptible shift began when he introduced Bethany, his new fiancée, into our lives. She was sharp, impeccably dressed in designer labels that seemed out of place among our rustic stills, and she spoke in hushed corporate tones about streamlining operations and rebranding our image. These words, so cold and sterile, felt like foreign invaders in the warmth of our old stone buildings, faintly unsettling. The first tangible crack in the facade appeared on a crisp autumn morning, a day that now replays in my mind with agonizing clarity. I had gone to Leo's old office, a sanctuary still imbued with the faint, comforting scent of his pipe tobacco and the echoes of his laughter. I wanted to consult one of the cherished, hand-written recipe journals for the 1950s Harvest Moon blend, a special request from an elderly customer whose loyalty dated back to Leo's grandfather. These journals weren't just instructions. They were living artifacts, their pages brittle with age, stained with whiskey spills, each meticulously detailed entry a piece of our family history, a whispered secret passed from generation to generation. I kept them in a locked oak cabinet, a piece Leo himself had built, but as my hand closed around the cool brass knob, I felt no resistance. The cabinet was unlocked and empty. A wave of icy dread washed over me. The journals, the very heart of Oak Haven, were gone. When I found Caleb later, he offered a nonchalant shrug, a gesture that twisted my stomach. "Oh, Bethany thought they were old and dusty, Martha," he explained, barely looking up from his tablet. "We're digitizing everything, it's more efficient." He promised they'd be returned, a hollow assurance that felt like a slap. Bethany, ever the picture of saccharine politeness, joined in with a blinding smile. "Don't worry, dear Martha, we're bringing Oak Haven into the 21st century. No more dusty old papers cluttering up the place." Her words, meant to soothe, only deepened the knot of apprehension in my chest. The scent of our true heritage was already fading, replaced by the sterile hum of efficiency. Not long after, Caleb and Bethany hosted an extravagant Oak Haven rebranding launch party. It was a spectacle of modern excess, utterly unlike the humble gatherings Leo would have approved. Flashy LED lights pulsed to unfamiliar, pounding music, illuminating sleek, minimalist new bottle designs that adorned every surface. The guests were predominantly young, wealthy investors and slick influencers, none of our loyal, decades-long customers, none of the salt-of-the-earth folks who truly appreciated a fine whiskey. Bethany, a shimmering vision in a silver gown, held court, her voice amplified through hidden speakers as she confidently introduced Oak Haven's new spirit. It was a light, somewhat bland, mass-produced whiskey, a pale imitation that bore little resemblance to our robust, complex Golden Reserve. During her speech, she practically preened. "We're shedding the dusty past," she declared, her gaze sweeping over the eager faces and embracing a vibrant, forward-looking future. "The old ways are charming, of course, but they simply don't scale. We're moving beyond niche appeal to global dominance." Her words were a thinly veiled jab at me, a silent accusation that I was a relic clinging to an outdated era. Caleb stood beside her, beaming, utterly captivated by her vision, either complicit in the subtle insult or completely oblivious. Not once did they mention Leo or the generations of Harpers who had poured their lives into the distillery. It was as if our entire history, the very essence of Oakhaven, was being meticulously scrubbed away, replaced by a glossy, soulless facade. The rich, deep notes of oak and aged whiskey, the very aroma of our true heritage, were being drowned out by cheap cologne and manufactured hype. As I watched them, a cold, hard truth settled over me. This wasn't just about modernization, it was about erasure. My heart ached, a deep, hollow pang of loss as I felt Leo's legacy, our shared dream, slipping through my fingers, diluted and distorted beyond recognition. The new spirit they championed tasted like betrayal, a bitter, unaged liquor in a fancy bottle, leaving only a sour aftertaste. The rebranding party was merely the overture to what felt like a systematic demolition of everything familiar. The distillery, once a place brimming with the comforting rhythm of tradition, the clang of coopers, the murmurs of aging barrels, became a sterile, impersonal factory. The old copper stills, burnished to a warm glow by Leo and his father countless times, were replaced with gleaming, automated stainless steel contraptions that hissed and clanked with an alien efficiency. Our long-standing, loyal employees, many of whom had worked alongside Leo for decades, started to disappear, their familiar faces replaced by a younger, less experienced crew, more focused on digital metrics than on the ancient craft of whiskey making. When I inquired about our master distiller, old Mr. Jenkins, a man whose hands knew every nuance of our fermentation process, Caleb vaguely said, "He retired, Martha. It was time for new blood. He just wasn't keeping up." But I knew Mr. Jenkins. He lived for the distillery, his hands calloused from years of tending the stills, his nose discerning the slightest off-note in a fermenting mash. He wouldn't have retired without a proper farewell, without a handshake and a shared whiskey. A seed of suspicion, initially dismissed as an old woman's anxieties, began to sprout into a full-blown conviction that something deeply wrong was unfolding. Bethany, now practically running the entire operation, introduced efficiency reports and cost-saving measures that seemed designed to strip away the very soul of Oakhaven. She mandated cheaper grains sourced from anonymous corporate suppliers, drastically shorter aging periods, and even had the audacity to suggest experimenting with artificial flavorings. That last notion made my blood run cold. This isn't Oakhaven's golden reserve, I argued, holding up a glass of their new, pale concoction. It looked thin, tasted thinner. This is just whiskey-flavored water. It's an insult to Leo's memory, Bethany, with an infuriatingly patient, almost condescending smile, replied, "It's what the market demands, Martha. We're adapting. Modern consumers want lighter, sweeter profiles, and they want it now, not after 10 years in a barrel." Caleb, usually so attuned to my concerns, just nodded along, seemingly entranced by Bethany's vision of a lucrative, fast-paced enterprise. His once bright eyes, so like Leo's, now held a detached, almost vacant look whenever I spoke about tradition or quality. It was as if the son I raised, the grandson who had promised to uphold Leo's legacy, had been replaced by a stranger, molded into Bethany's corporate ideal. The silence from the rest of the family, usually so vocal about distillery matters, was deafening. My own children, Caleb's parents, seemed to be kept at arm's length by Bethany, given vague assurances that everything was under control and Martha just needed time to adjust to the changes. One afternoon, a chillingly pivotal moment, I overheard a hushed conversation between Caleb and Bethany in Leo's old office. The door was ajar just enough for their voices to carry, like insidious whispers on a breeze. "The investors are thrilled with the cost cuts," Bethany purred, her voice a low, satisfied hum. "Once we eliminate the historical overhead, which, frankly, includes a lot of sentimentality, Oakhaven will be pure profit. And those old recipes, dead weight. Nobody wants artisan anymore, it's all about volume, about scalability." Caleb's response was barely audible, but I caught words like Martha and resistance. "She'll come around," Bethany chuckled, a brittle, dismissive sound. "Or she won't matter, we just need to accelerate the transition." The words hit me like a physical blow, sharper than any fist. Dead weight. Won't matter. It wasn't just neglect. It was a deliberate, calculated strategy to erase not just the heritage but me along with it. The memory of Leo's unwavering dedication, his calloused hands lovingly tending the stills, his fierce pride in every barrel, fueled a quiet, furious fire within me. I wasn't going to sit idly by and watch them dismantle his life's work to desecrate our family's very soul. I slipped away unnoticed, my mind racing, a storm of indignation brewing. The distillery was more than just a business. It was a testament to generations of passion, hard work, and integrity. It was Leo's final legacy, and I would fight tooth and nail to protect it, even if it meant turning against my own family. The very air in the distillery seemed to hum with the ghosts of past generations, whispering their approval of my growing defiance, urging me to remember the strength of the Oakhaven spirit, to rise to the occasion. My immediate thought after the chilling conversation was to find irrefutable proof. If the handwritten recipe books were truly digitized, as Caleb claimed, I needed to see those digital files. But Bethany, ever the vigilant gatekeeper, had locked down the distillery's internal servers, accessible only by her and Caleb. My old administrator credentials, which Leo had personally set up for me years ago, a privilege I cherished, had been inexplicably revoked. I wasn't a tech whiz, but I knew enough to realize this wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate maneuver, a clear attempt to cut me off from any information. Their digital fortress seemed impenetrable. My next move, however, was defiantly low-tech, reliant on old habits and forgotten hiding spots. Leo had always been a man of redundancy, a firm believer in physical backups. He used to joke, "Paper never crashes, Martha, and ink rarely corrupts." I recalled a conversation years ago about a backup of the backup for the most critical family secrets, not just recipes, but the original supplier lists, the meticulously hand-scribed barrel-aging logs, and even the records of our unique wild yeast strains, isolated and nurtured over decades. He had spoken of a secure, off-site location, a place so unremarkable, so forgotten, no one would ever suspect it. His old hunting cabin, deep in the sprawling Oakhaven woods, a place where he often retreated to think and tinker, was the first place that sprang to mind. It was a rustic, dilapidated shack, long abandoned after his passing, but filled with 1,000 memories of whispered plans and quiet dreams. That afternoon, under the flimsy guise of gathering old sentimental items, I drove the bumpy, overgrown track that led to the cabin. The air was thick with the crisp scent of pine and damp earth, a stark contrast to the cloying sweetness of Bethany's berry bliss. Inside the cabin, dust motes danced in the sparse sunlight filtering through grimy, cobwebbed windows, illuminating a scene of forgotten masculinity. Worn-out fishing gear, tattered hunting magazines, old boots caked with dried mud. It took hours of methodical searching, sifting through layers of forgotten debris, pushing aside rusty tools and old canning jars. Just as despair began to creep in, just as the afternoon light started to wane, my hand brushed against a loose floorboard beneath Leo's old workbench. It slid slightly under pressure. Beneath it, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from damp and decay, was a heavy, battered metal box. My fingers trembled as I unlatched it, the sound a faint click in the quiet cabin. Inside, neatly stacked, were not the large recipe books I had sought, but a collection of thick, leather-bound notebooks, identical in style to the ones that had disappeared, but older, their pages even more brittle with age. These were Leo's personal research journals, filled with his meticulous notes on experimental blends, forgotten aging techniques, and, crucially, a complete, meticulously documented record of the original Golden Reserve formula. It included details about the unique spring water source deep on the property, the specific centuries-old oak trees used for our barrel wood, and even the precise atmospheric conditions for optimal aging information, not even in the main distillery recipe books. A triumphant surge of adrenaline, sharp and invigorating, coursed through me. This was the true core of Oakhaven, the living essence of our heritage, untouched by Bethany's modern machinations. Later that week, Caleb brought home a glossy, disturbingly cheerful brochure for a luxury assisted living facility called Golden Sunset Haven. It was an opulent place, all manicured lawns and smiling, compliant residents. "It's got lovely gardens, Martha, and you'd have so much company," he said, his eyes avoiding mine, fixed on some point over my shoulder. Bethany, ever the insidious charmer, piped in, "It's just for your comfort, dear. You deserve a peaceful retirement, away from the stresses of the business. Caleb and I can handle everything." My hand tightened instinctively on the brochure, the smooth paper crinkling under my grip. They weren't just stealing the distillery. They were trying to put me away, to silence me permanently, to make me disappear into a gilded cage. "You think I'm that easily dismissed?" I asked, my voice low and steady, eyes locked on Caleb's uncomfortable face. He flinched, then looked away, shuffling his feet. "It's for your own good, Martha, we just want you to be comfortable." My own good, I echoed, the words laced with ice, a cold burn in my throat. My own good is here at Oakhaven, where Leo and I built a legacy. Your own good is probably tied to how quickly you can get rid of me and sell off everything. Bethany laughed, a brittle, dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. Martha, don't be dramatic, it's just a suggestion, a very kind one. But I saw the flicker of alarm in her eyes, the sudden tension in Caleb's jaw. They knew I was onto them, that I wasn't just a senile old woman easily shipped off. The discovery of Leo's hidden journals had given me a new kind of strength, a quiet resolve that pulsed beneath my calm exterior. I took the brochure, tore it slowly and deliberately into tiny, confetti-like pieces, letting them flutter to the polished hardwood floor like discarded autumn leaves. You want to talk about legacies? I said, standing tall, my gaze sweeping over both of them. I'll show you a legacy, a very real, very potent legacy. The subtle power shift in the room was palpable. Their smug confidence had been replaced by a faint tremor of unease. They had underestimated the spirit of Oakhaven, and more importantly, they had underestimated me. The war had just begun, and I was armed with the truth. With Leo's hidden journals secured, tucked away in a safe deposit box only I could access, my resolve hardened into steel. I knew I couldn't confront Caleb and Bethany directly yet. Their grip on the distillery was tight, reinforced by corporate lawyers and their freshly appointed board members. They had meticulously constructed a legal framework, however flimsy its true foundation, to support their modernization efforts. I needed to work from the shadows, to meticulously understand their weaknesses, and to prepare my counterattack like a seasoned strategist. My first crucial step was to discreetly re-establish contact with the distillery's most loyal former employees. Old Mr. Jenkins, the master distiller, was my primary target. He was a man who lived and breathed whiskey, his hands bearing the indelible marks of decades spent coaxing complex flavors from grain and wood. I visited him at his quiet, tidy cottage, nestled amongst the rolling hills near the distillery, where the air was clean and carried only the honest scent of earth. He opened the door with a weary smile, his eyes, usually twinkling with mischief, still holding the deep sadness of Oakhaven's recent, jarring transformation. Martha, he said, a hint of surprise, then warmth in his voice. It's been far too long. I heard what they did to the Oakhaven. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I laid out my suspicions, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence, showing him a page from Leo's secret journal. It detailed the exact wild yeast strain used for the original Golden Reserve, a strain Bethany had claimed was too inconsistent, and replaced with a commercial, mass-produced variant. Mr. Jenkins's eyes widened with a flicker of recognition, then a surge of anger. They changed everything, Martha, he confirmed, his voice thick with emotion, tinged with a lifetime of dedication. The specific water source, the unique barley varieties we cultivated, it's not Oakhaven anymore. It's just generic spirit in a fancy bottle. He then launched into a detailed account of how Bethany had systematically undermined his authority, dismissed his traditional methods, and micromanaged every aspect of production until his work became impossible, forcing him into a retirement that was anything but voluntary. Crucially, he also shared invaluable information. Bethany had installed new, complex automated systems for distillation, boasting about their efficiency, but she had little to no understanding of their intricate manual overrides, relying entirely on vague instruction manuals and outsourced tech support. She's all about the shiny buttons, Martha, he scoffed, but she don't know how to truly run the thing when it throws a fit. This was a critical vulnerability, a chink in their polished armor. His loyalty to Leo's legacy, his deep-rooted pride in true Oakhaven was unwavering. Oakhaven deserves its soul back, Martha, he vowed, his gaze firm, and I'll help you get it. Next, I turned my attention to the distillery's supply chain, a network of relationships built on trust and shared values. Our family had always sourced our grains from local farms, cultivating partnerships over decades, ensuring the finest, most consistent quality. Bethany, however, with her relentless pursuit of cost efficiency, had switched to a large, impersonal corporate supplier, boasting about volume discounts that undoubtedly came at the expense of quality. I made an unannounced visit to old Farmer Jones, whose family had supplied Oakhaven with our specific variety of barley since Leo's grandfather's time. He was distraught, his usually cheerful face etched with worry lines. They canceled my contract without a word, Martha, he told me, shaking his head slowly, sadly. Just a cold email from some corporate drone. Said our barley wasn't standardized enough, not uniform enough for their new machines. He revealed that Bethany had been demanding cheaper, lower-quality grains from the new supplier, often rushing deliveries, which could compromise the grain's freshness and introduce subtle off-notes to the final product. This confirmed my deepest fears about their utter disregard for quality, for the very essence of what made Oak Haven special. I asked Farmer Jones to keep my visit a complete secret, hinting subtly that Oak Haven might one day return to its roots, to its authentic suppliers. His eyes, though tired, lit up with a flicker of hope, a fragile promise of future collaboration. Armed with this newfound knowledge and the unwavering support of Mr. Jenkins, I began a subtle, almost imperceptible campaign of silent sabotage. Using my deep understanding of the distillery's layout and processes, gleaned from years spent by Leo's side, watching, learning, and participating, and with Mr. Jenkins's expert guidance on the new automated systems, I found ways to introduce minute anomalies. A subtle, almost imperceptible tweak to a valve setting on the automated fermenters, causing a barely detectable alteration in temperature that subtly affected the yeast activity. A tiny, almost invisible adjustment to the humidity controls in the aging warehouses, subtly slowing the maturation process of their new batches, ensuring their product would never reach its full potential. Nothing catastrophic, nothing traceable directly back to me, but just enough to ensure their streamlined, new product wouldn't quite live up to its supposed efficiency and definitely wouldn't taste like real Oak Haven. I overheard Bethany complaining about unexpected variations and production hiccups during increasingly agitated phone calls, her voice growing taut with frustration. Caleb, however, remained in denial, blaming the new machines or the fickle weather. It's just teething problems, he'd insist, rubbing his temples. We'll work through it. But I knew with every tiny, unnoticed adjustment, I was weaving a web of subtle chaos, ensuring that their rush to erase our past would ultimately lead to a product that tasted like a pale imitation, a shadow of the true Oak Haven legacy. The irony was not lost on me. They were trying to cut me out of the business, to make me irrelevant, but without my subtle intervention, their product would never truly shine, proving my indispensable knowledge, my inherent connection to the Oak Haven spirit. As my silent sabotage continued, a profound sense of satisfaction, cold and precise, settled within me. I noticed Bethany's once-unflappable corporate patience wearing thin. Her impeccably maintained facade began to crack under the relentless pressure of unexplained production issues, baffling anomalies, and steadily declining sales. The new whiskey, aggressively marketed as Oak Haven's modern spirit and later Berry Bliss, was performing abysmally in blind taste tests, collecting scathing reviews from critics and accumulating lukewarm, at best, consumer feedback. It's just not hitting the mark, I heard Bethany mutter angrily to Caleb one evening, her voice a low, frustrated growl. The critics say it lacks depth, character. It tastes thin. Caleb, usually so quick to defend her every decision, looked genuinely perplexed, his brow furrowed with a confusion I recognized. But we followed all the formulas, Bethany, the ones you approved. It's supposed to be efficient. What are we missing? I almost smiled. Efficiency, without soul, without passion, was indeed just emptiness. Their singular focus on speed and volume had not only sacrificed the very essence of Oak Haven but had rendered their product a hollow mockery. My greatest concern, the one that kept me awake in the quiet hours of the night, was the fate of the remaining vintage barrels. These were not mere containers of whiskey. They were liquid history, some holding spirits aged for decades, Leo's finest, rarest work. These precious barrels, containing the true golden reserve, our unassailable link to the past, were our most valuable asset. Bethany had meticulously locked them away in a state-of-the-art, climate-controlled vault, planning to sell them off at a massive profit, completely separate from the new, cheaper production. I knew their existence was our last, strongest card. One morning, I spotted Bethany on a video call, her voice unusually hushed, her posture tense. She was talking to someone about appraisals and discreet liquidation of high-value assets. The words hung in the air, chilling me to the bone. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. She was planning to sell the vintage stock, likely to pay off mounting debts from their floundering new line or to fund another one of her ill-conceived innovations. This was a direct, existential threat to the very core of Leo's legacy, a desecration of his foresight and dedication. I needed to know more, and I needed to act swiftly, decisively, before those irreplaceable barrels disappeared forever into anonymous hands. Remembering Leo's almost obsessive meticulous nature, his penchant for hidden compartments and careful record-keeping, I started looking for his old ledgers and shipping manifests, hoping to find some obscure record of the vintage barrels that would lead me to a deeper secret. After hours of painstaking searching in his old study, a room I had barely touched since his passing, trying to respect his space, my fingers brushed against a loose wooden panel behind a seldom-used bookshelf. It was a hidden compartment, cleverly disguised. Inside, meticulously organized, were not only detailed records of every single vintage barrel, their precise distillation dates and locations, but also a collection of small, sealed envelopes, yellowed with age. Each envelope contained a single handwritten note from Leo, addressed simply to me, for when the spirit of Oakhaven truly needs rekindling. And inside each note, a small, intricate silver key. A small, almost imperceptible key that didn't fit any lock I knew within the distillery, or even in our home. But it was definitely a key. Along with the keys was a faded, hand-drawn map, marked with symbols I vaguely recognized from Leo's old hunting trips, leading to a forgotten, overgrown section of the vast Oakhaven property that bordered a rarely used, disused railway line. The map pointed to an old, abandoned railway tunnel, a relic from the early 20th century, rumored to have been used for illicit whiskey transport during Prohibition. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of Leo's foresight. Could he have hidden some of our most precious, irreplaceable stock there, a safeguard against some unforeseen betrayal? Could the key be for a personal vault within it, a final, unassailable sanctuary for his true spirit? The discovery of the key and map was like a bolt of lightning, illuminating a path I hadn't seen, igniting a fierce determination within me. This wasn't just about reclaiming control. It was about revealing a truth that went beyond what Caleb and Bethany had ever imagined, a truth that would expose their superficiality and greed. The prospect of uncovering a secret, original cache of golden reserve, meticulously preserved by Leo himself, was exhilarating. It wasn't just a physical treasure, it was a spiritual one, a tangible link to the authentic Oakhaven, untouched by modern hands, untainted by commercial compromise. The silent adjustments I had been making to Caleb and Bethany's production continued, subtly, like a drip of water on a stone, eroding their confidence, ensuring the inferiority of their modern spirit would be undeniable, making the contrast with this pure, authentic whiskey even more stark. Now, I had the ultimate weapon, the undeniable proof of their betrayal and the living embodiment of the legacy they sought to destroy. The new batches were tasting consistently off, the berry bliss a sickly sweet failure, and Bethany's complaints grew louder, more frantic. I overheard her snapping at Caleb about unforeseen expenses and underperforming assets, confirming my suspicion that their new spirit was a financial drain. She even mentioned having to dip into the family reserves to keep things afloat, a desperate measure that betrayed their precarious financial standing. Caleb, looking increasingly weary and haunted, tried to reassure her, but his words lacked conviction. He seemed to be waking up slowly to the reality of their predicament, to the true depth of the hole they had dug, but the full extent of their folly remained hidden from him. My plan was simple: expose the truth, not just about their deceit, but about the true spirit of Oakhaven, the one they thought they could erase forever. The key in my hand felt heavy, filled with the weight of generations, promising a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the family legacy, a reckoning long overdue. Armed with Leo's cryptic map and the mysterious silver key, I planned my perilous expedition to the abandoned railway tunnel. It was a daunting venture, especially given my age, but the thought of uncovering a hidden trove of our true Oakhaven legacy spurred me on, lending an unexpected vigor to my steps. I knew I couldn't undertake this alone. I enlisted Mr. Jenkins, whose unwavering loyalty and intimate knowledge of the sprawling Oakhaven grounds were absolutely invaluable. He, too, felt the deep reverence for Leo's foresight, a shared understanding that transcended mere business. "If anyone could hide something like this, Martha," he said, his eyes gleaming with excitement, a spark of his old self returning, it was Leo. He always had a trick up his sleeve for a rainy day. We picked a moonless night, the perfect cover for our clandestine operation. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves as we navigated the bumpy, overgrown track that led deeper into the woods, the path barely discernible in the oppressive darkness. Mr. Jenkins, despite his age, moved with surprising agility, his movements economical and precise, his old-world resilience shining through every careful step. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of pushing through dense underbrush and ducking low branches, we reached the mouth of the old railway tunnel, a gaping maw in the side of a steep hill, shrouded in centuries of ivy and shadowed by ancient, gnarled trees. The air inside was cool and still, carrying not just the scent of damp earth and old stone, but faintly, unmistakably, the rich, complex aroma of perfectly aged whiskey. It was the scent of home, of history, of a promise. We moved slowly, our flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness, their beams dancing on the rough-hewn walls, illuminating dust motes that spun like tiny galaxies. The tunnel stretched deep into the hillside, damp and echoing with every hushed step. About halfway in, the map indicated a specific deviation, a barely visible bricktop section on the left wall, camouflaged by loose stones and creeping moss. Mr. Jenkins, using his intuitive knowledge of old masonry and a practiced eye, quickly located the cleverly disguised entrance. With a sturdy crowbar we had brought, a tool of silent liberation, we carefully, patiently pried away the loose bricks, one by one, revealing a heavy, steel-reinforced door. The silver key, warm from my clasping hand, slid into the lock with a satisfying click that resonated in the silent tunnel, and the door swung open with a slow, creaking groan, revealing a smaller, perfectly climate-controlled chamber within. Inside, bathed in the precise beams of our flashlights, were rows upon rows of barrels, meticulously stacked from floor to ceiling, covered in a thin, delicate layer of dust but otherwise pristine. These weren't just any barrels. These were the rare, limited edition casks, each bearing Leo's personal stamp, some marked with dates from before Caleb was even born, vintages that hadn't seen the light of day in decades. The air within this secret chamber was thick, almost syrupy, with the concentrated essence of perfectly aged Oakhaven's Golden Reserve, an aroma so potent it almost brought tears to my eyes. And it wasn't just barrels. Among them, in a small, secure, rust-proof box, we found meticulously preserved records detailing each barrel's origin, distillation date, and even Leo's personal tasting notes for every single year. This was more than just whiskey. It was a time capsule, a liquid library of our family's true craftsmanship, preserved by Leo against some unforeseen future threat, a testament to his unwavering belief in the Oakhaven spirit. Among the records, nestled at the very bottom, were a collection of old, yellowed letters, sealed with Leo's wax seal. They were addressed to me, to Caleb, and even to future generations, explaining his foresight in preserving these barrels. "I fear the day Oakhaven loses its way," one letter read, his familiar handwriting clear and resolute, "so I leave this as a testament to what we truly are. May it guide you back to our spirit and remind you of the honesty in every drop." The discovery was overwhelming, a profound emotional vindication of everything I believed, everything I had fought for. This was the true Oakhaven, the one Bethany and Caleb tried so desperately to erase, to replace with their shallow imitations. Mr. Jenkins, tears welling in his eyes, reverently touched one of the cold, dusty barrels. "He knew, Martha," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "he knew they would try to change it, to bastardize it." We photographed everything, meticulously documenting the hidden cache, creating irrefutable evidence of the vault and Leo's deliberate act of preservation. The subtle adjustments I had been making to Caleb and Bethany's production were designed to highlight the inferiority of their modern spirit, making the contrast with this pure, authentic whiskey, this liquid history, even more stark. Now, I had the ultimate weapon, the undeniable proof of their betrayal and the living embodiment of the legacy they sought to destroy. This secret vault wasn't just a place. It was a promise, a tangible symbol of Oakhaven's enduring soul, waiting to be unleashed upon a world that had forgotten its true taste. The time for silent sabotage was over. The time for a grand, undeniable revelation had begun, a thunderclap in the quiet world of whiskey. The day I chose to unveil Leo's hidden treasure was strategically chosen, imbued with a potent sense of poetic justice. The annual Oakhaven Wine and Spirit Festival, a cherished local event where the distillery always commanded a prominent, almost regal booth. This year, Caleb and Bethany, oblivious to the storm brewing, planned to launch yet another exciting new product. A synthetic, cloyingly sweet, artificially flavored whiskey aimed at a younger, less discerning demographic. It was their moment to shine, a carefully orchestrated PR event designed to solidify their modern oak haven, to put the final nail in the coffin of the old ways. But it was also my stage. With Mr. Jenkins's unwavering support, his eyes alight with a mischievous gleam, and the discreet, invaluable help of a trusted old family friend who owned a small, independent distribution company, I meticulously prepared for the ultimate reveal. We arranged for a small, unassuming, unbranded booth, tucked away from the main, flamboyant Oakhaven display, simply labeled Heritage Reserve. Our plan was elegantly simple. Offer blind tastings, letting the whiskey speak for itself, allowing the true spirit to tell its own story. As the festival buzzed with activity, a kaleidoscope of sights and sounds, Caleb and Bethany held court at their flashy booth, their new Oakhaven Berry Bliss prominently displayed, glowing under bright lights. Bethany, ever the showman, was giving interviews, her voice amplified and saccharine, about innovation and consumer trends, about how they were revolutionizing the industry. Across the way, at our unassuming booth, Mr. Jenkins and I quietly, reverently poured small samples of Leo's Golden Reserve from one of the freshly unearthed barrels. The aroma alone was enough to draw attention. It was a deep, rich, complex perfume that instantly captivated those who wandered by. People, initially drawn by mere curiosity, would take a tentative sip, and their eyes would widen, a look of profound recognition spreading across their faces. Whispers began to spread through the crowd like wildfire. Have you tried that Heritage Reserve? It's incredible. It tastes exactly like the Oakhaven I remember from my grandfather's liquor cabinet. It's real. Soon, a small crowd, then a larger one, gathered around our booth, drawn not by flashy marketing, but by the genuine enthusiasm of those who had tasted the real thing, by the intoxicating pull of authenticity. A prominent food critic, Elias Thorne, notorious for his discerning palate and brutally honest reviews, happened upon our booth. He was a man whose word could make or break a brand. He took a sip of the Heritage Reserve, his brow furrowing in deep concentration, his gaze distant as if truly savoring a memory. Then his eyes snapped open, blazing with an almost fierce delight. This is magnificent," he exclaimed, his voice booming, cutting through the festival's din. "This is the true Oakhaven. What is this? Where has this been hiding?" He then, with a dramatic flourish, tried a sample of Caleb and Bethany's Berry Bliss. His face contorted in an expression of sheer disgust. "This," he announced, spitting the liquid into a nearby potted plant, "is an insult to the Oakhaven name, a saccharine abomination." He then proceeded to conduct an impromptu, scathing review right there on the spot, his words a precise, elegant dismantling of Caleb and Bethany's entire brand, drawing an even larger, captivated crowd. "Oakhaven has lost its way, strayed far from its proud roots," he declared, gesturing towards Caleb and Bethany's booth, now looking pathetic in its gaudy splendor. "But the true spirit, the real heritage, the very soul of Oakhaven is right here." Caleb and Bethany, drawn by the sudden, overwhelming commotion, stared in horror as the crowd swelled around my booth, their faces a mixture of disbelief and dawning dread. Bethany rushed over, her face a mask of furious indignation, her carefully constructed composure finally shattering. "Martha, what is the meaning of this? You're sabotaging us. You're ruining everything." I simply held up a glass of the Golden Reserve, the amber liquid glowing, almost shimmering in the sunlight, a beacon of truth. "This," I said, my voice clear and strong, cutting through the murmuring crowd, "is the meaning of Oakhaven. Not your manufactured bliss, not your cheap imitations, but Leo's legacy. The lost blend, rediscovered and returned." Caleb, looking utterly stunned, stared at the glass, then at the labels on the barrels behind me, his face paling as he recognized his grandfather's unmistakable handwriting on the old barrel tags. "Lost?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "What are you talking about, Martha?" I explained everything concisely and calmly, my words weighted with generations of truth. Leo's foresight, the hidden vault, their systematic dismantling of our heritage, the forged recipes, the low-quality grains, the very soul they had tried to erase. The food critic, Elias Thorne, recorded my every word, his eyes gleaming with journalistic zeal, a predator scenting a monumental story. Bethany tried to interject, her voice rising to a shrill shriek. "She's senile, this is absurd, this is a complete fabrication." But her words were drowned out by the murmurs of the crowd, by the growing buzz of recognition, by the genuine admiration for the whiskey in their hands. Caleb, overwhelmed by the public humiliation, the undeniable evidence, and the profound revelation of his grandfather's secret, simply stared at me, his face a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning realization. The modern Oakhaven they had built, the fragile empire constructed on a foundation of deceit and greed, crumbled under the undeniable weight of one truly authentic, meticulously preserved drop of history. The crowd, suddenly galvanized by the drama and the truth, began to chant, a rhythmic, powerful chorus. Oakhaven, Oakhaven! But they were chanting for the true Oakhaven, the one I had just brought back from oblivion, the one that tasted of honesty and heritage. The fallout from the Oakhaven Spirit Festival was immediate, brutal, and utterly devastating for Caleb and Bethany. Elias Thorne's searing review, meticulously detailed and expertly written, exploded across the internet. Titled "The Ghost of Oakhaven Haunts Its Impostors," it meticulously recounted my story, Leo's incredible foresight, the unearthed barrels, and presented a damning side-by-side comparison between the authentic Heritage Reserve and Caleb and Bethany's, Berry Bliss, and other modern concoctions. The truth, once unveiled, spread like wildfire. Investors panicked, their calls flooding the distillery's switchboard. Orders were canceled en masse. The new Oakhaven, a fragile facade built on shallow foundations and hollow promises, crumbled under the relentless weight of public outcry and dwindling confidence. Bethany, ever defiant, attempted to control the narrative, issuing frantic, rambling press releases filled with corporate jargon. But her words rang hollow, thin, and brittle against the undeniable, rich taste of Leo's whiskey, a truth tasted by thousands. Caleb, visibly distraught, his once bright eyes shadowed by deep exhaustion, finally broke. He came to me, not with anger or accusation, but with a profound sense of shame and regret, a crushing weight of realization. He looked hollowed out, the ambitious gleam in his eyes replaced by a deep sorrow that seemed to age him by years. "Martha," he began, his voice hoarse, barely above a whisper, I had no idea, not really. Bethany told me the old recipes were outdated, that you wanted to retire, that you were just resistant to change. She managed everything, handled all the details. I trusted her." He explained, his words tumbling out in a rush of confession, how Bethany had systematically isolated him, feeding him selective, skewed information, manipulating his understanding, pushing him to sign documents without full comprehension. He confessed to being utterly dazzled by her unwavering confidence, by her slick presentations, and by the alluring promises of quick wealth and global expansion, promises that had blinded him to the insidious decay at the heart of their operation. "I lost sight of what Oakhaven truly was," he admitted, his head bowed, unable to meet my gaze. "I became so focused on the future, on growth, that I forgot the roots. I'm so incredibly sorry, Martha. I betrayed Grandfather Leo, and I betrayed you." His words, though painful in their delay, felt genuine, wrung from the depths of a newly awakened conscience. I looked at him, not with anger, for the fury had dissipated, but with a weary sadness, a deep disappointment that still lingered. "You allowed yourself to be blind, Caleb," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You let someone else tell you what to believe, what to value. That's a betrayal of its own kind, a betrayal of yourself and of everything Leo built." The Oakhaven board, facing financial ruin and a public relations nightmare of epic proportions, called for an emergency, closed-door meeting. Bethany, defiant to the very end, attempted a desperate, last-ditch effort to paint me as a senile, vengeful woman bent on sabotaging the family business for personal spite. But Mr. Jenkins, his integrity unassailable, provided sworn testimony about the new automated systems and Bethany's abysmal lack of technical understanding, meticulously corroborating my claims of her reckless decisions. The evidence of Leo's hidden vault, complete with the detailed records and his prescient letters, was irrefutable, a tangible testament to truth. The discovery of the authentic Golden Reserve, tasted and championed by so many, sealed their fate. The board, seeing no other path, voted unanimously to remove Bethany from all management roles and initiate an immediate, comprehensive internal investigation into her financial dealings, suspecting more than just mismanagement. Caleb, with a heavy heart, offered his resignation as CEO, his voice cracking with emotion. "I can't lead Oakhaven, not after this," he said, his gaze fixed on the polished boardroom table. "But I want to help you rebuild, Martha, if you'll let me. Not as a leader, but as someone who understands our mistakes, who knows where we went wrong." With Caleb stepping down and Bethany effectively banished, the board, desperate to restore credibility and salvage what remained of Oakhaven's reputation, formally requested that I take over as interim CEO, founder emeritus. It was a role I hadn't actively sought, having envisioned a quiet retirement, but one I accepted with a profound sense of purpose, a duty to Leo's legacy. My first act on stepping into Leo's old office, now truly mine again, was to reinstate Mr. Jenkins as master distiller, giving him full autonomy over production, trusting his wisdom implicitly. We immediately switched back to our traditional local suppliers, re-establishing those vital community bonds that had been so carelessly severed. I launched a new, heartfelt marketing campaign focused on the return of Oakhaven's true spirit, emphasizing authenticity, meticulous craftsmanship, and the enduring power of legacy. Caleb, to my surprise, proved to be an invaluable asset in the painstaking rebuilding process. He worked tirelessly, not in a leadership role but meticulously reviewing contracts, mending fractured relationships with disgruntled distributors, and even, to my quiet delight, learning the old distillation methods from Mr. Jenkins. Slowly but surely reconnecting with the heritage he had almost lost, finding redemption in the labor. He spoke to our original employees, listening intently, learning from their frustrations, and humbly acknowledging his past errors. It was a long, arduous process, filled with countless challenges, but slowly, meticulously, Oakhaven began to heal, began to breathe again. Months passed, each day bringing a renewed sense of purpose. The rich, comforting scent of genuine malted barley and aged oak returned to the distillery, a familiar embrace that settled deep in my soul. Our sales began to climb steadily, driven by a newfound appreciation for quality and authenticity, by the story of our resilience. The Heritage Reserve became more than just a product. It became a symbol of our enduring spirit, a testament to truth. One quiet afternoon, as I watched Mr. Jenkins expertly tending the stills, his movements fluid and practiced, Caleb approached me. He had changed. The sharp edges of his ambition had softened, replaced by a quiet thoughtfulness. "Martha," he said, his voice tinged with a new humility, "I've decided to go back to school. To study business ethics and to learn more about sustainable, traditional agriculture. I want to understand how to truly build something, not just exploit it. To understand what a real legacy means." I smiled, a genuine, warm smile this time, seeing a glimmer of the grandson I once knew. "That's a good start, Caleb," I said, my voice gentle. "Your grandfather would be proud. He always believed in learning, in growing." He nodded, then looked out at the bustling distillery floor, where the old and new employees now worked in harmony. "This," he said, a quiet awe in his voice, "this feels like home again, a true home." I didn't offer him a position, not yet, but I knew, watching him, that the true spirit of Oakhaven was not just in the barrels, but in the lessons learned, the redemption earned, and the legacies reclaimed. My family's heritage, once almost erased, was not only saved but strengthened, ready for generations to come, truly distilled from resilience and the rich, complex flavors of truth. The Oakhaven Requiem had ended and the Oakhaven Resurgence had just begun. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, please make sure to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments.